Since Russia launched its all-out war against Ukraine, NATO allies have provided Kyiv with military aid worth 65 billion euros. The US has been the most generous, followed by the UK and Germany. According to the Kyiv Institute's Ukraine support tracker, in 1 year, US President Joe Biden's administration committed $46.6 billion in military assistance to help Ukraine fight against the Russian invasion. This sum does not include funding for M1 Abrams tanks and additional aid packages announced in February, March, April, and May. US military support to Ukraine includes armored personnel carriers, boats, drones, radars, small arms, various munitions and equipment, along with the highly effective high-mobility artillery rocket systems known as HIMARS, Javelin anti-tank and Stinger anti-aircraft missile systems. These weapons helped Ukraine to repel the Russian attempt to occupy Kyiv, fight Russian forces to a near standstill in Donbass, and even liberate its territories in the northeast and south. Naturally, this much military assistance sparked concerns among some Americans. Some politicians and commentators criticized the US generosity, saying that their country's taxpayer money is being spent on the war in Ukraine instead of internal issues. These arguments are very often expressed against helping Ukraine altogether and play into the Kremlin's hands. Though cutting military aid to Ukraine would neither stop the war nor bring peace to Europe, let's dig into the money issue. So who is really paying for these weapons? And is the US helping Ukraine at the expense of its citizens, as some argue? The truth is that the US military budget has been high for many decades. Military and defense funding is actually the biggest portion of American government's discretionary spending, regardless of what is happening in Ukraine or other countries. According to the New York Times, congressionally approved aid to Ukraine in 2022 represented less than 1/10 of the US defense budget. Now, if we look at this assistance as a portion of GDP, US military aid pales in comparison to what Ukraine's other allies provided in 2022. While US assistance is remarkable and crucial, it still does not match what Washington spent on other military conflicts. Around $2 trillion were spent on the war in Afghanistan, which involved deployed US ground troops, something that didn't happen in Ukraine. The cost of US support for Ukrainian and European security without US troops in battle is incomparable. Ukraine has proven that it's capable of winning this war, and foreign military aid is not a donation, as some may argue. This is why defense aid to Kyiv has ramped up after Ukrainian troops showed significant results on the battlefield, such as the liberation of Russian-occupied territories in the northeast and south. Most weapons that the US sends to Ukraine come from existing stockpiles. That means that these weapons were already paid for long before Russia's full-scale war. This includes man-portable Stinger air defense systems, Javelin anti-tank missiles, and some really old items like the Vietnam War-era Hawk missile systems, among others. Since weapons and vehicles also have expiration dates, stocks need to be utilized or replenished. From that point of view, it's in the US interest to give some of its arms stocks away to its allies rather than just pay for their disposal. Here you can see that weapons from stockpiles amount to half of American military aid to Ukraine. Note that a large portion of total military aid to Ukraine also comes as loans, so it's not a charity either. While providing aid to Ukraine has caused US stockpiles run out of certain weapons, it has also spurred the production of new ones. War is not only a matter of seeing money go away. Helping Ukraine is also good for business, in this case for the US defense industry. American arms stocks will eventually have to be replenished, and US companies will benefit from it. That's why many weapons manufacturers in both Europe and the US saw their stock prices rise when Russia launched its full-scale war last year. The European demand for US weapons has also grown as governments had to look for new deals with Washington and its defense manufacturers. Moreover, the US is also seeing the opportunity to test out its weapons on Ukraine's battlefields. But why is the US helping Ukraine in the first place? Let's not forget that Ukraine is also fighting Washington's geopolitical rival at a time when Moscow wants to dominate Europe. It is obviously cheaper for the US to help Ukraine fight off Russia by supplying weapons now than it is to wait until its rival occupies another country and Americans have to confront Moscow, roughly speaking, with their own hands.
Your money is not charity. It's an investment in the global security and democracy that we handle in the most responsible way.
If the West allows Putin to rampage unchecked, Russia's potential victory over Ukraine could cost far more, and the danger could literally hit home for its NATO allies.
What the people of Ukraine are defending, what you've achieved, is a matter for the entire world to observe, and they're in awe of what you've done so far, really and truly. It's incredible. Together with the entire G7, we have Ukraine's back, and I promise we're not going anywhere.
All in all, the US and NATO as a whole understand that Ukraine is not only defending itself, but also entire Europe from Russia's fascist imperial expansion. There are thus clear benefits to the US supporting this fight now, when someone else is doing the hardest work. It is clear that Ukraine's survival in the face of the Russian invasion relies on Western military support, and on the US in particular as the biggest weapons supplier. Though Kremlin's propaganda pushes the narrative that military aid to Ukraine is escalating the war, Western military assistance is actually helping Ukraine to defend and save lives of its civilians. Russia has already killed thousands of civilians not only on the front line, but also across Ukraine. All told, the US citizens are not paying steeply to help Ukraine fight its war. They are sending a fraction of what has already been allocated for the country's defense budget to help Ukraine end the war that Russia started. If you like this episode, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to turn on notifications. This will help us grow and produce more explainers and video stories about Ukraine. Stay tuned.